If you haven't started a podcast yet and only thinking about it, then today's show is for you. If you've already started a podcast but want to level up, then today's show is definitely for you. Stay tuned for some amazing golden nuggets from our guest, Anna Parker-Naples. She is a Get Visible speaker, coach, and audio expert who helps leaders get louder by amplifying their message through the power of podcasts. Don't go away. We will be right back. If you're just joining us, then welcome to the Writers' Corner live show. I'm your host, Bridgetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa. Our stream today is made possible by StreamYard, Creative Edge, and Be Live Media, helping business owners make live videos. A special warm welcome to you, our viewers. If you're watching us on Amazon, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, or on LinkedIn, just know that this is an audience-centric show. We are monitoring the comments, so please feel free to introduce yourself, chat amongst each other, say hi. If you say that you are new in the comments, we'd be happy to give you a shout out to welcome you to the show. Before we introduce our amazing guest, one of the things that we can do to take charge of our story is to embrace live video by going live on camera. But to do that, we do need a few things, such as a camera. You need a great chair to sit on. I'm very big on having a chair that is functional and that supports your spine because I live with chronic pain. You also need streaming software and earphones. So if you're watching us over on Amazon, all those things that can help you set up for a great live stream are in the carousel. And we'll talk a little bit about the book by Anna Parker-Naples that is also in the carousel if you are watching us over on Amazon. But before we bring Anna onto the show, I want to first introduce my co-host and friend, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She's a special needs and disabilities advocate and the award-winning author of the Poolicious children's book series. Mary, welcome to the show.
Whoops. Okay. How are you?
I'm very well, and yourself?
I am so happy to be here today and excited. And now I'm a #1 Amazon best-selling author too. We can both add that to our little resumes. And so very exciting, isn't it?
It is all very exciting. And talk about being in the top #1. I'm so excited to have our guest today because, a lot of people are struggling with the pandemic. They've suffered from the unintended consequences of COVID and are struggling to run their businesses. And so I'm really, really, really excited to bring Anna on because she's got a solution for those who are struggling to amplify their voice.
I think that's great because we need to. And there are so many people who want to. I was thinking about this earlier, how podcasting is now becoming inundated with so many people that are trying to get into this, that it's almost like the acting field or the writing field. The competition is getting more and more. So I really can't wait to hear what she has to say. Hi, Darshan. Can't wait to hear what she has to say for those of us who want to know. I've got a girlfriend who's been for years, she's wanted to start a podcast, and she has the website, she has the name, but she just can't bring herself to step out into that spot, even though I know she would be totally amazing. So I can't wait to hear what Anna has to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know Anna and who's never met her before, she's a best-selling author of Podcast with Impact and Get Visible. And both those books are in the carousel if you're watching us over on Amazon. Anna is a speaker, a coach, and an audio expert. So she's just the right person to get the knowledge from. She helps leaders get louder by amplifying their message through the power of podcasts. And her own show, Entrepreneurs Get Visible, is amongst the top 1% of all broad podcasts globally. That
That's
is
amazing.
massive.
That
Is
is massive.
absolutely, yes.
Yes.
And she does perhaps have an unfair advantage, but that's why we want to get the nuggets from her. She's got a background as a multi-award winning audio producer and voice actor.
So she knows what she's doing. Her credentials are legit, as we say, right?
It's totally legit. And
yes.
and why I'm excited to talk to her is because I relate to her on this level. She went from being disabled to fully recovered at the top of a field, on the red carpets in Hollywood, and she will help us wrap our heads around the mindset as well, because being successful in the podcasting space, a lot of it is also mindset. So
yes.
I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's just get her onto the show, shall we?
Yeah, I know, because we could talk about this forever.
we can. Let's just get her onto the show and get all those golden nuggets from her right now.
Hi, Anna.
Anna, welcome to the show. It is so great to have you join us. Thank you for
We're very honored to have you here. So
such a lovely welcome.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy. Thank you for joining us.
Anna, firstly, a huge congratulations on this amazing book, Podcast with Impact: How to Start and Launch Your Podcast Properly. I love the way that you themed it, because everybody can start a podcast, but doing it the right way is what sets you apart. And so with that, you've probably heard us, in the introduction, a lot of people have suffered from the unintended consequences of COVID. And so it's, if your business has failed, a lot of businesses have failed during COVID. I know long-standing businesses that's been running for 30, 40, 50 years, and they folded. And so now you've got those people, and we fall into this pity party trap, that leads to paralysis and inaction. Tell us a little bit about your journey, because you got the news one day that you're going to be in a wheelchair. Tell us a bit about your story.
I was told, it was about 11 and a half years ago now, and I was heavily pregnant with my third child. I was told as a complication in pregnancy to expect that I'd never walk again. I had two very young children. One had just started school, so we had to get her there every day. An 18-month-old, very rambunctious toddler, and then newborn coming shortly. And I'd been an actor, so the thought that I wasn't going to be able to just pop out baby number 3 and get back on stage was crippling. That way more than the news. What it did to my mind, what it did to my sense of self, was pretty desperate. And I realized I had a choice. I have a choice that I can either stay in this pit of self-pity, or I can find ways to really look after my state of mind so that I can, if this is my new future, I feel at ease and peace with it and make the best of a bad situation. And at that point, I discovered the whole world of mindset, and specifically neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis. And it really got me challenging a lot of things I was thinking about myself and about my own capabilities. And one of the things that the guy said to me, there was a couple, he said, well, what would happen if the doctors were wrong and you could recover? I hadn't even considered that. I was still just locked in the narrative that my life was over. What would happen if there was a way for you to be in a wheelchair and be known for your acting work worldwide and still be at home with the children? And the answer, as you're watching this now, the answer was becoming a voiceover artist and a voice actor. And actually, the little studio space that I'm sitting in now was actually our airing cupboard. It's where all our linen was kept. And it was the only door in the house that we had space to bring the wheelchair in, and I could sit and I could record. And so I threw myself into learning everything about editing, microphones, voice performance, and I had no idea where that journey was going to lead. And as you mentioned earlier, that actually led me to feeling so much better about myself, being much more positive, and it led me to actually being on the red carpets in Hollywood, winning multiple awards just within 5 or 6 years, which is kind of crazy.
Wow, that just that few minutes there is so inspirational. Anna, what an honor for you to tell us this story about your life and to share it with us. And you kind of already are talking about what you did with your voice and the important, and actually it has served you very well in your life and is a very important part of your life. So beyond that, how would you define the importance of using your voice via podcasting to serve you as an entrepreneur or business leader? And is there any kind of industry or business it would not serve to have? And that would probably be a child in a library, right? But other than that, there's probably not many places that it wouldn't serve you, right?
So this for me then comes back what happened next in that story. So I've had this incredible arc of being at the depths to then being at the top of a profession. I was booked out round the clock, which as an actor is something that is like a godsend. And I had this moment of actually, I think the journey's just starting. It hasn't finished because I've reached this place. Actually, what's important to me now is to tell other people that they can change their lives, their relationships, how they see themselves, their levels of success, their levels of income, whatever it is. And I felt very much that I, at that point, was coming into the motivational space to help. I'd trained in NLP myself and all sorts of mindset work. And I knew I wanted to reach the masses, and you can probably see what's coming here. I started an online business. I started trying to reach people globally, and I didn't know how to do it until one day someone said, "Why don't you start a podcast?" Now, this was 4 or 5 years ago when a lot of people, podcasting was still not really that well known. And so I did. I literally came into my cupboard and started a podcast, and that was it. I was a podcaster. But so what? I didn't know how to launch it. I didn't know the back end of it. I didn't know how to use it to drive traffic, how to reach more people. And so now, to skip forward 4 years from there, I now have one of the top podcasts in the world that complement my books, that complement my coaching, and it all kind of works together. And I really see podcasting as a way that whatever it is we do in our business, whatever we're doing, and even if you don't have a business, maybe you have something that feels much more like a mission or a purpose. Actually, what you want to do is reach as many of your ideal clients as you can to amplify that message, to really at core touch somebody's life so that they take a specific action. Now, that action could be come and work with you, but that action could also be start to change differently and be that voice of inspiration. And I think when we see that that's really what podcasting is about, it's about using your voice to elicit some change, to become the catalyst. Suddenly, it's not about you and your own fears about showing up on camera or on the microphone. It is about that person that you're trying to serve. And I think every business is trying to serve some customer somehow.
Absolutely.
I like that phrase that you just used, using your voice as a catalyst for change. I think that's quite key.
Yes.
I think we've all had moments where we've listened to something, and there's something very powerful about it often just being audio as well. We've all had moments where we've heard something on the radio, on a podcast, on an audio book, and we can literally, whatever we're doing, we are transported to that possibility, to unraveling something about our lives. I'm sure you ladies have had moments where something you've heard on a show, on a podcast, on radio, and you can remember what that was and what it made you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And voice does have a kind of different power to move you. I love video, but I do know from days when the radio was the thing or the only option that we had back in the day, how a voice can transform your thinking, your emotions. It can impact you on a different level. It touches your senses in a different way.
Absolutely, because you're reliant on one sense. You're not distracted by the visuals. You're not worrying about what someone else is doing. Very often, when we are, it transports us to a different world when we're listening to audio, and we're not just listening to the words. Our sense of hearing is heightened to pick up the nuances of communication. Do I really believe what someone's saying? Are their words matching the energy that's coming through their words? We can hear when someone wobbles. We can hear the imperfections in someone's voice, and it becomes a much more fleshed out relationship. Particularly if you're out walking your dog, or you're having a shower, or you're in your car, you feel very drawn into somebody's story because of the resonance of their voice.
Absolutely. So as a voice actor then, what would you say, what role do the technical aspects of setting up your podcast for success play? I mean, a lot of people would say, well, can I not just jump on my phone? I mean, there's so many apps these days, and you can download a podcasting app from your phone if you wish. Could you do that? Should you do that? Or how do you set it up for success?
I think it comes down to a couple of things. One is about the status. If you're doing a show, if you're going to the effort of doing that, how do you want people to receive you? The kind of status and positioning of your show. When we listen to something that's poor audio quality and we are dependent on the sound to know whether we're going to stick around, if something is poor audio quality, they won't stay. And whilst on the one hand, I think it's wonderful that people can use their phone directly and record a podcast and it can be up and out into the world within minutes, actually, if that isn't creating a positive listening experience, then why wouldn't you, and your messaging is important to you, why wouldn't you take steps to change? Now, I'm sitting here inside a studio booth, but sometimes I do actually record on my phone, but always with a great quality clip-on microphone that adapts my phone into a great sound. So I don't think you need everything flashy, but you do have to understand that quality does matter. Your environment does matter. And it's actually the recording environment coupled with the microphone that is more important than anything else.
That's really good. That's good advice, because we get to see, Brigetti and I both get to see very poor qualities. I'm not trying to say anything negative. We're just always trying to put out the best quality that we can, so that when you see somebody who either didn't take the time or has not educated themselves or think it is as easy as just jumping on, they don't realize how it's like with the live streaming. Sometimes the camera is down here, sometimes it's up here, sometimes we can see straight up somebody's nose, and that just takes away from the whole quality of it, period. Yeah, it's very distracting. So your show, The Entrepreneurs Get Visible, is like Brigetti said, it's amongst the top 1% of podcasts globally, which is congratulations again, because that is a tremendous feat. What differentiates a podcast from, being average to becoming a great podcast at the level where you are?
There are several components to this, as I'm sure you can appreciate. It's what actually goes into the planning of the podcast right from the conception. So often someone will say, I've got an idea for a podcast, I'm just going to start. And actually I would say, well, hold your horses a little bit. It's great that you've got that energy and that enthusiasm, but have you thought about who your target audience is, what keywords they're searching for, what things they most want to know? And this has to then feed through into the title of your show, into the title of individual episodes, keywords that you're using. if you're doing a podcast and you really want to make it a success and be found on Google, you want to think about search engine optimization on show notes. And it's all of these components that fit together. And you want to make sure that whoever your show is for, you're actually answering things and discussing things they want to know about. So there is a little bit of background market research in the same way that you would if you were starting a business. You'd want to think, who's my ideal client? And I think it's those things together, combined with great audio, combined with a great launch. You've got to kickstart your podcast powerfully and not just start it and hope for the best, which is what I see so many people doing. You've got to be intentional about how you launch the show, about how you're driving traffic to your show when you start, so that then the apps themselves, like Spotify and Apple, are going to do the extra promotion and the extra legwork for you from then on.
So it really is about designing it from the beginning, not leaving it to chance and hoping for the best.
Yes. Absolutely. So many people will say, oh, I started a podcast. I had an idea. I started a podcast. I recorded 2 episodes and I'm waiting to see how it does before I tell anyone that I've started a podcast. I'm sure you're laughing as you see me. I'm sure you know people who've done that. And the truth is, there is this unique window of opportunity when you first launch a show or you do a new season where actually you want as many people downloading it and listening and following and supporting you as possible, so that you're getting maximum eyes and ears. You've got better promotion opportunities at those points than at any other time. And one of the reasons people do that is because they're scared about their own voice being out there. Even though they feel like they've got a message and they know they want to podcast, the fear kicks in. What if I'm not good enough? What if I don't sound good enough? What if I'm just talking waffle? And that comes up time and time again with business owners, very successful experts and coaches that we help support inside the podcast agency. People at the top of their game, we still get them messaging us to say, are you sure it's okay? Can you just listen? Have I spoken a lot of rubbish? Does this make sense? Is it all okay? And that kind of imposter syndrome really does kick in. And that's one of the things that prevents people from really, really doing well with their own self-promotion of their podcast.
Anna, you've said something quite impactful for me that stands out, because generally a lot of people's advice is just start. And you saying, if you want to be successful, hold back. Don't just start. You need to plan a successful start. So for me, that was quite interesting, hearing that you're saying, make sure that you have someone in your corner. Make sure that you've set up your SEO, your keywords, know what you're going to be talking about, be strategic about your launch. So that's something different to what I've not heard other people say. And no wonder that you are as successful as you are, because it means that you're very intentional. And that kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to ask you is, how important is strategy when you're setting up your podcast? And can you tell us, what are some of the common mistakes that you've observed?
Common mistakes are obviously not telling people you've got a podcast in the first place. It's rushing to get it out of the door because you just want to have a podcast, but you haven't thought, well, what am I going to do with this podcast in 3 months, 6 months, a year? Other mistakes are not being clear on where the podcast fits into your overall business strategy, and how are you driving traffic from the podcast into something that generates income. It's about not being clear about who the podcast is for and what you personally want to get out of it, what you want your listeners to get out of listening to your show, because it's always got to be about them, and also about what does your business want from this podcast. And I think when you're really honest about the purpose of your show from all 3 of those facets, then you can be much more intentional with what you put together.
And I have the same question as Darshan, who's watching, and I know a lot of people do. How do you make money? We want some of your gold nuggets, your tips and your tricks and good advice. Obviously, we want that, but we also want to know, how do you take and monetize your podcast? Now, obviously, it's sort of like a book. You write a book, and a book is like a business card for people. But the majority of ways these days, I think, for people to be successful with selling a book is having some merch, having something extended from that you teach, or you hold a class, or you provide seminars and in-person events and things like that. So how would you advise us for a podcast?
So the obvious one is to say you need sponsorship. But actually, on my own show, I don't choose to have sponsors. It's a very deliberate intention, because I would much rather bring people into my business and sell my own products and services than send them to someone else's. So you've got to think about what's the overall strategy for my business as well. There are kind of two main ways that you can really get a return on investment for your podcasting. One is the relationship you develop with the listeners. So they would become your raving fans. They might go from your podcast to buy your book, into your funnel, your lead magnet, into your services. We see time and again people almost jumping funnels, because they will go straight from listening to a podcast, binge listening to all of the episodes, and then saying, well, I want to mentor with this person at the highest level of coaching that they give. The other ways are a return on investment through developing relationship with your guests, or with hosts if you were guesting on podcasts. Very often there are joint ventures that happen, collaborations that happen as a result of that. Some people use their podcast very strategically to predominantly interview people that they'd really like to make a client, and that then is accelerating or dispensing of the need for a sales call. So there are so many different ways. Affiliation, there are things where you can have premium level content, such as Spotify and Patreon, and Apple now have subscription models as well. But you have to go back to the core of, what's my mission? What's the purpose of my business? Why am I really doing this? And be targeted in what you're doing, and don't just kind of scattergun approach everything. You've got to know what's in it for you and your business, really.
So you're saying that you've got to be very strategic and know what your goals are, what are the outcomes that you're seeking, and work backwards almost. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the mistakes I see a lot of podcasters making, or even podcast guests when they go on other people's show, is that they are sending people to too many different options. They get on one individual episode, they would be saying, where can people find out more about you? And people will reel off LinkedIn. I've got this checklist. You can find me on Instagram. I've got this coaching package. And actually, in truth, it's too overwhelming. People won't take any action whatsoever. So you've got to think, what's the one action I want them to take that also fits with what we've talked about on that particular episode, and being really intentional about that. And it took me a while to learn this. It's my second show that's really successful, not my first, because I had to work out why wasn't I having the success? Why wasn't my previous audience growing? What was the difference? And it's the strategic intent behind absolutely every element of the show that has made the difference.
And that's so important. I mean, all of what you're saying is really vital and very important. And it doesn't need to be done very sloppily, because even though there are things in life you can jump in and start, and then things kind of take on a life of their own, the majority of things really need that planning, thought process, thinking it through, and by design is a really good word, I think, to have it all by design.
That planning doesn't have to take a long time, but it does have to happen. Because if
Yeah.
you just are rocking up in front of a microphone and waffling and just riffing, your show is not going to be as successful as someone who has stopped to think, actually, what's the one topic my audience needs to hear right now? And making sure that that's what you cover, and they know that's what you're going to cover, and they feel that everything you've shared, they've got something valuable to take away with them.
It's no business. I mean, it's no different from starting a business, right? Nobody just jumps into launching a new business. You don't just sort of, the fact that you've got the the office space and a desk
Mhm.
and a chair doesn't make it a good business in the same way as having a microphone, and doesn't make you a good podcaster.
Yeah,
There's a little bit more
absolutely.
than just having the gadgets to become successful. Could you share with us your 3 top tips for launching a successful podcast?
So I think number one is making sure that you've tweaked everything on behind the scenes. So you've got your description right, your show looks great, the branding is great. You've got to make sure the audio quality is great. And I don't just mean just the microphone. I mean the music that you're using. You're very intentional with what your intro is, and you're using that for search engine optimization perspective as well. And then the other thing is, don't just hide your show. Be really proud of it from day one and launch it like you would launch any other part of your business, or if you were launching a book. You wouldn't just write a book and then not tell anyone it was on Amazon. You would celebrate that fact. And so the more you can understand how to do that for a podcast, the better your initial downloads are going to be, which stands you in good stead to grow your show from there on.
Yes, very, very good advice. Very good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So thank you so much for all these gold nuggets. And we will definitely go and listen. And I'm a big fan, and I know Brigetti is a big fan, and we will have to have you back on sometime soon.
Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be
Yes.
here.
Thank you so
Anna,
much.
thank you so much. And I want to just give a huge shout out to our audience who's joined us today in the comments. Big shout out to Darshawn. He's got a podcast of his own as well. So thank you everyone for joining us. Appreciate your time, and thank you for taking the time to comment. Anna, thank you for all the golden nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
And we look forward to having you on the show again in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone, and stay safe. Until next time, it's goodbye from us at the Writers' Corner live show.